Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics on Random. Egberto Willis, your host. ¿Dónde están todos? Where are all our peeps? Well, at least we've got AVQ in the house with Michael Rudnin. We also have Melanie Keaton. How are you doing, Melanie? From España. We also have Yvette Avery Herod. Good afternoon, PDR Posse, she says. And our reliable Bridge MCP. Bridge, you're going to see in one of the articles that I'm quoting that the person spoke about what the British Empire pretty much did to the Irish. I guess it had to do with the potato famine or the big famine out there in Ireland as well. So you are reaching, folks. You are reaching, folks. You are reaching, folks. Anyhow, we have a great interview for you today with El Señor Thom Hartmann. But before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about Rudnin's 538 article, which says 60% of Americans will have an election denier on the ballot this fall. There are a lot of election deniers on the ballot. Out of 540 total Republican nominees running for office, we found 199 who fully denied the legitimacy of the 2020 election. These candidates either clearly stated that the election was stolen from Trump or took legal action to overturn the results, such as voting not to certify election results or joining lawsuits that sought to overturn the election. Only 74 Republican nominees have fully accepted the results of the 2020 election. In the House, many of these election deniers look to win. Using the latest data from the 538 2022 midterm election forecast, we can see that 118 election deniers have at least a 95% chance of winning. Several additional candidates who have denied the election are in competitive races. Sometimes I wonder if our nation will survive a fascist takeover of our government after a sufficient fraction of these conspiracy nutters get elected. Democrats had a chance to disqualify all those who planned, incited, and participated in January 6th election under 14th Amendment challenges and failed to do so. The Department of Justice could have charged them with seditious conspiracy, but similar failed to do so. I've checked, and even my own home state of New York has a couple of representatives among those numbers who are likely to win seats. Nicole, look, they only win the seats if we don't go ahead and just kick some butt. I think we're going to have a lot of big surprises. Surprises because a lot of folks are keeping their mouth shut because they know this is a whole lot of crap going on. Nicole Miliotakis, New York's 11th denial status, fully denied position source, congressional roll call. Chance of winning 93 in 100. Ellis M. Stefanik, New York, I know her. Isn't she the leader? 21st denial status, fully denied. Position source, congressional roll call. Chance of winning 99 in 100. Egberto, looking at this horror showing up in your state of Texas, I really worry about our nation. So many conspiracy nutters in Congress. It really is depressing, but probably more so for you because one of those might be your representative. Mine didn't quite deny it, but he didn't quite call it out either. Anyhow, I'm not going to read on anymore because everybody gets the picture. You guys can read it on your own. We also have Alistair Waters in the house. Bridge MCP welcomes Alistair and Melanie. Let's see what else we got here. Lee Grant is in the house. He says, yeah. Norman Reynolds is in the house. He says, hey. And para ver if I forgot anybody so far, Yvette says, keep bringing the knowledge, keep bringing the knowledge. All right, folks, today we got ourselves the one and only, my buddy, Thom Hartmann is with us. Let's go over, let's see before. Lee Grant says, I gather in the Manichaean world, progressive dialogue, you are either an election denier or an election supporter. Can one be a semi-denier? No, we only want folks who tell the truth. Nada más los que digan la verdad. So here we go with Thom Hartmann. Welcome to Politics and Random. Egberto Willis, your host. We are here today with a special guest, Thom Hartmann. Thom Hartmann is a 4-time winner of the Project Censored Award, a New York Times best-selling author of 33 books. We know it's more than that now, and America's #1 progressive talk show radio host. His show is syndicated on local for-profit and non-profit stations and broadcast nationwide and worldwide. It is also simulcast on television into nearly 60 million homes on Free Speech TV, among many others, as well as the Pacifica Network and KPFT 90.1 FM Houston. Thom, Hartmann. Welcome to Politics Unread. How are you doing today, my friend?
Egberto, it is always so nice to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, look, we are here to discuss a very important book, and that is The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reaganism Gutted America, and How to Restore Its Greatness. Look, especially in these times, it's needed. What made you write the book, Thom?
Well, this is actually a book I've been wanting to write for years. Mm-hmm. And, this Hidden History series is doing well. And the publisher reached out and said, can you add another book to this? And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I really think that we are at this major hinge point in history, this turning point for America. We've had a 40-year neoliberal experiment, and that some people refer to as Reaganism or trickle-down economics or supply-side economics or whatever you want to call it. It's really called neoliberal economics. And it is failing terribly. It's gutted the American middle class, which has gone from 65% of us to 45% of us in fewer than 30 years. It has provided for the massive concentration of wealth at the top. We have 3 American men who are worth more than the entire bottom half of America. It has expanded poverty. Homelessness is at an all-time high. It's just the wreckage of neoliberalism is all around us. And of course, the Republican Party still 100% clings to it. And there's no shortage of Democrats who are still pushing the neoliberal song and dance. And so I wanted to publish a book that just essentially exposed it. And it starts in the 1930s with the first meetings in Paris and then in Switzerland, where they came up with this idea, and leads all the way to today.
That's something that I learned. I remember that book, Capitalism Hits, not Capitalism Hit, that's the other guy. That book that was put out by the lady, I can't remember her name right now, where she spoke about Chile and Argentina.
Like Shock Doctrine.
Shock Doctrine. I read that book, Shock Doctrine, but even in reading that book, I didn't realize, I almost fixated on Ronald Reagan, just like you initially said there, until I kind of read the beginning of your book where you actually state that they were a group of economists sitting down, creating this market-based system as if there was some mythical market that could solve all the problems based on, given that their theory is that, there are so many different variables in the market, we couldn't have anything at all centralized, so we just let the market dictate everything. I didn't know that actually occurred before the Reagan administration, etc.
Yeah, no, the intellectual forefathers, and this is really a classic example of, the old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Hayek, Mises, and Friedman, among others. There was a group of about 30. But these guys were the shakers and the movers and the principal evangelists. Got together first in Paris in the late 30s, and then in Switzerland around the end of World War II. And the question that they were grappling with, they had just seen Russia go communist, and they had seen both Italy, Germany, and Spain go fascist. And so the question was, how can you make democracies, modern Western democracies, resilient enough that they will neither go communist nor go fascist? How do you protect democracy? And, Abraham Maslow, the famous psychologist, is often quoted as saying, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem in the world looks like a nail. Mm-hmm. And of course, these guys were economists. And so they figured the answer to fixing democracy is economic. And their point, and it makes sense. It turns out it doesn't work, but their point was at every given moment, literally during the time of this sentence, there's probably going to be 1 million decisions made in the marketplace, probably just in my state of Oregon. People choosing which orange juice to buy, which pair of pants to buy, which store to shop at, where to buy their gas. There's literally millions, billions of decisions being made in the marketplace every minute of every day. And their point was that is a data set that represents basically an intelligence or a data that no bureaucrat, no government official, and no politician could ever hope to replicate in terms of having data for decision making. And therefore, we should simply let the market basically run everything. Let the market run all the decisions. The only functions of government should be police and fire, and maybe not even fire. Fire should be privatized too, but police and the army, and run a court system to adjudicate disputes, and everything else will just take care of itself. And that all the things that governments do that they consider to be interference in the market or causing distortions in the marketplace, whether it was licensure. Milton Friedman argued against licensing doctors. Weirdly enough, it distorts the marketplace. Or whether it is, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, housing support, the social safety net, or whether it's states and federal government paying the tuition for college, whatever it may be, all of those things. I mean, they weren't so crazed and ideological that they called them communism or socialism the way Republicans do. But what they said was, these are interference. All these things interfere in the normal market, in the normal functioning of the marketplace. And therefore, we need to get rid of them all. And, we've tried this neoliberal experiment now in Chile. We've tried it in Russia. We've tried it in Iraq. And we've tried it in the United States. And it's failed in every one of those places. And in fact, what it points out, what it proves, is what I've been saying for years and years. And that is that the resting state of capitalism is what Charles Dickens described in his novels. You've got, a 1% that's the very rich, the royal family and the landowners. You've got a 2 or 3% that is the middle class. That was Scrooge in Christmas. Mm-hmm. He was a small businessman. He owned a little tiny business that had 2 employees, him and Bob Cratchit. And then you've got 95% of the population that's literally the working poor, and more than 3/4 of them live their entire lives in debt. That's the resting state of capitalism. That's the norm of unregulated capitalism. That's the history of 500 years of Europe and countries all around the world, frankly, that have tried capitalist systems, laissez-faire capitalist systems.
Now, look, Thom, I'm an engineer. Okay. All I do, before I did this, was all numbers. And it's, what you just said is a mathematical formula, right? In other words, if you have a sect that can grow at a higher percentage than the majority, then eventually, in a system that is closed, then eventually that set takes it all. It's the derivative. I mean, this is all math, right? So it's not hard for somebody like me to understand exactly what you just said. What concerns me is maybe something that you said, and you said that sometimes the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And I sit down and wonder how these guys are economists and they also know numbers. And yes, it is true that there are various variables. There, too many variables for us to create other than a supercomputer to solve. Granted, agreed. But there are certain basics that one should say, we created the economy. We created a society. Why is it that we cannot understand that we can set the parameters loosely or more definitely and have that market work around that? As an example,
right.
We talk about healthcare. As an example, we talk about healthcare. Why couldn't they have said, well, that the healthcare, we'll have that bifurcated economy where healthcare is protected, because even the market system needs people that are healthy. That's just one example.
Well, that Charles Dickens state of capitalism, which, by the way, existed in the United States in the census of 1900, mm-hmm. There were only about 5% of Americans that were what we would today call middle class. The mm-hmm. average family income in today's dollars was $4,300 a year.
Wow.
Most of America was living in deep poverty in 1900. So it really wasn't until Franklin Roosevelt started really aggressively regulating capitalism that he did so in a way that allowed a middle class to emerge. And America's middle class, we hit 65% of Americans being in the middle class in 1980 when Reagan came into office, or 81. And that had never before happened in the history of the world, because it was regulating capitalism. And the analogy that I draw to, for your healthcare thing is football. You could say, oh, yeah, let's apply laissez-faire theory to football. Mm-hmm. Each team can have as many people as they want on the field. Whichever team gives the largest contribution to the NFL gets an extra player. You can grab face masks. You can, you just kind of make up your own rules as you go along, as long as you don't kill anybody. Mm-hmm. eventually what would happen is the team with the that pays the biggest bribes to the NFL to get extra players on the field, or the team that is most willing to basically push the envelope into what might be arguably unethical at the very least, is going to be the team that ends up with everything. Just like, as Honoré de Balzac said, that behind every great fortune is a great crime.
No kidding.
Yes.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Today, in fact, on my show, and this isn't a crime though, on my show, I was pointing out because I went to the drugstore today to get the penicillin for my teeth, and I was talking about healthcare system in Canada versus here, and the guy from Sudan who all his relatives are doctors in either Sudan, Canada, or America. You could see that he actually got the capitalism bug in him, because when I said I wouldn't have had to gone through this crap that I went through to get penicillin over there, he said, "Yeah, that's true, but there are goods and cons." He says the one thing that money does is it brings innovation. And then I stopped him and I said, what did Bezos invent? What did any one of these guys invent? Nothing, right? They paid somebody a penny on the dollar to create something. Those people created it and they profited. Please tell me, how is it that innovation came from profit? It seems to me like the person who innovated didn't make the profit. Your thoughts?
Thomas Edison was dirt poor when he started out, as was George Westinghouse.
There you go.
I mean, it's John Rockefeller was not born into great wealth, but he was a very effective predator.
Right.
So no, that's nonsense. I mean, that's like an internet meme or something. You don't need great wealth to have innovation, and you don't need predatory capitalism to have innovation. Innovation is the result of people wanting something better than they have right now, and that's an absolutely universal thing. And some people will have these skills to apply that in an engineering context. Other people, they'll come up with a new cooking recipe. Other people will develop new art. There's a million ways to innovate. None of them, in my opinion, depend on a so-called free market.
It's funny that these myths, though, kind of cauterize into people's minds, and you just hear them. You hear the poorest person regurgitating that nonsense constantly. Oh, we have to protect this capitalist structure because innovation will end. There's something that's quite interesting, Tom. You spoke about Milton Friedman, and I think you kind of gave a little bit of maybe a little bit of pass to guys. I thought there was a special evil to Milton Friedman. I don't know if you remember in the 1970s when Milton Friedman had something to say with regards to you executives owe absolutely nothing to the people, to society. Your sole responsibility are to the shareholders. Don't you think that is the type of premise that all of this is based on, and in fact, quite a bit of your book?
Yeah, Friedman, being a neoliberal, believed that, capital should always seek capital. It should do whatever is necessary to maximize capital, as long as you're not harming others. But his definition of harm was fairly loose. He was a big advocate of General Pinochet, who was taking people in helicopters and throwing them in the ocean when they disagreed with him. And torturing them in the national arena and killing them and burying their bodies there. So, Friedman is one of the more amoral of the bunch, in my opinion. I think Hayek and Mises, in particular Mises, probably were more utopians, and Friedman was more of a sellout. Yeah, I mean, he started out as a hustler for the real estate industry.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Now, interestingly, you did a contrast between Bush and Obama. Explain that. I mean, I'm interested in it. When I say that, I mean it's like Bush was a deep neoliberal, and somehow Obama saved us.
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Well, I think what you mean is when you said that. What is it that you call it? Obama rescues neoliberalism from itself.
Oh, is that in the book?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I know where you're coming from. I just wanted it to be you saying it.
My point is that Bush. Well, actually, it was Clinton. In '99, blowing up Glass-Steagall, who deregulated the banks.
Oh,
It was Graham's idea. The Republicans were pushing the idea. That deregulation of the banks crashed the economy in the United States and around the world in 2008 on Bush's watch. And then Obama comes in and says, "Okay, well, we're gonna put some fingers in the dike. We're gonna fix things a little bit." But Obama was a neoliberal also.
Yeah, definitely.
Obamacare is just another way of shoveling taxpayer dollars into the pockets of giant corporations. And
I think what I was trying to say that you meant was that I got out of it was that he allowed it to sort of survive by putting some patches in there, so that some sort of survivability there.
Right, and then Trump came in and took out the patches, and surprise, surprise, we've got even more wealth inequality and more problems.
Which is expected. Now, I spoke to Richard Wolff a few weeks ago, and because I really got upset at inflation, I have this theory that I put out there, and I would like to hear your comments on this. Whereas I said the Russian war really should have created a glut. And I actually made mention on this on Muslim TV, where I think it's proven now, Russia, the war is in Ukraine, not Russia. And Russia still has quite a bit of oil being exported, being bought at discount from China and India, which means the oil that China and India have been purchasing on the markets, they're purchasing less oil off the markets. And as such, where the hell is this shortage? We also added another 1 million barrels of oil from our reserves per day into it. And suddenly, by the way, while the prices reached in Texas 5-something, I think in California 6-something, there was never ever a glut or never ever a shortage of gasoline, even though we only dropped by 2%. What does those numbers tell you?
Well, there's two things going on. The first is that during the pandemic in 2020, when nobody was flying and the sky was free of airplanes, the price of oil collapsed to about $30 a barrel. And
right.
Had small oil operations all over the Texas, the Permian Basin,
went under
Oklahoma, that whole area, who were running on debt, and they were going bankrupt left and right. And a lot of them were good friends with, right-wing billionaires who had a lot of influence with Donald Trump. And so they went to Trump and they said, "You got to save us." And so Trump sends Jared Kushner over to Saudi Arabia, and he negotiates this deal with Mohammed bin Salman, where they're going to drop production by 2.2 or 2.4 million barrels a day. Saudi Arabia did, to try to support the price of oil. He did, and they did, and the price of oil went up to around $40-50 a barrel, and the oil and the Texas guys were no longer going bankrupt, and everybody was happy. So then Biden comes into office, and he reaches out to Saudi Arabia and says, "How about restoring those cuts that you did for Bush, or for Trump rather?" And Mohammed bin Salman is like, "You've been trash talking me. Screw you." And to this day, they haven't restored that production. There's been a very slight increase in production on the order of a couple 100,000 barrels a day. But that happened. I do think, though, that the price of oil went, or the price of gasoline rather, and the price of oil for that matter, went up as high as it did and as far as it did, in part in response to the war in Ukraine, not because there was an actual shortage, but because people were anticipating it. Futures markets tend to drive markets, and futures markets are driven by speculation. So you had that, and that's why it's going back down again. And also, I think it's going back down again because the president and a lot of economists, the Robert Reiches and the what's his name, Paul
Krugman.
Krugman, yeah, are we're just saying out loud, these guys are just ripping us off, and there's no shortage of proof of it. And then the quarterly results came out at the end of the last quarter. And ExxonMobil and Shell had the best quarters, I believe, in the history of the company.
History.
Yeah.
And at
that point, I think they thought, okay, if we keep doing this, they're going to hit us with a windfall profits tax, which, by the way, 5 European countries have already done.
Right.
And we don't want that windfall profits tax to spread. So we'll stop ripping people off. We'll let the price go down to $3 or $4 a gallon. We can still make good money. And so I think that a large part of that explosion in gas prices that lasted about 3 or 4 months was artificial. It
price
was just
and power.
It was price gouging. Yeah. It was monopoly-based price gouging.
it's like I said, when this started to happen, I went and I got Dr. Richard Wolff right away, because one of the things that I wanted to point out is that those with price and power, and I think a lot of this is implied in your book as well. Price and power is what really drives costs. A lot of times it has less to do with scarcity than it does with again, price and power.
Yeah, well, we have an economy in the United States where there is literally not a single consequential industry left that is not dominated more than 80% by fewer than 5 companies.
Wow.
Operate as cartels. So, competition is largely dead in the United States. Prices, for example, in Europe, you can get, 100, 200 megabyte internet up and down service plus a cell phone for $30 a month.
Wow.
Just the internet. $18 to $20 a month. Here in the United States, that internet is $60 or $70 a month, and the cell phone is $40, $50, whatever the market will bear. And that's the key. They're not pricing the pricing of most products in the United States, whether it's airfares, whether it's pick your poison, as it were. There's very few things that are actually subject to competitive price pressures that hold prices down. It's all how much can we charge before people stop buying or start screaming. And that's why the average American, and I pointed this out in the Hidden History of Monopoly and that you and I talked about.
Yeah.
That's why the average American spends $5,000 a year more than the average Canadian or the average European on a whole variety of things. I call it a monopoly tax, but your internet, your cell phone, your pretty much everything you're buying. Because there is no competition in the United States anymore.
Even though the effective tax, again, I said the effective tax rate is not all that different from those that offer good socialized medicine and much more. Now, Thom, chapter 15, privatizing of the commons. And I have some thoughts about that, but tell me a little bit about that.
Well, this is one of the big one of the things that neoliberal economists and politicians just absolutely love. It's why Joe Manchin got slipped into both the bipartisan infrastructure bill,
right,
and the Reduction Act, a provision that every single penny that gets spent has to go through the hands of a for-profit corporation. And that is this neoliberal idea that government can't do anything right. And even when government spends tax money, they should spend it through private for-profit corporations so that somebody can make a buck off it, because that'll enhance the private economy. And the private economy is the ultimate God. It's the ultimate good. It's the thing that makes everything wonderful. And so these private-public partnerships that people like Josh Gottheimer, the neoliberals in the Democratic Party and the entire Republican Party are so in love with, that's what they are. And it's just another way of ripping off the American public, frankly.
And trying to take get the land as well. But I think it's that statement that you made. It's important about that the first tax dollar has to be spent by private corporations. I think it's important for us to also call things the way they are. Profit, when government spends with for profit companies, profits become an expense, and unless your waste, if you want to call government wasteful, unless said waste is equivalent to the profit plus, might as well have the waste, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's inherently wasteful. And half of our defense budget is now running through the hands of private corporations. We even have, this is how insane it is. When my dad was in the Army during World War II, you had kitchen duty, KP duty, right? And you'd peel the potatoes and make the meal, and you were a soldier. And if the base got overrun, you'd pick up your gun and go shoot at the bad guys.
Yep.
Well, they got this brilliant idea when we invaded Afghanistan. George Bush, being a neoliberal, said, well, we need to privatize everything except combat. And they didn't. They even privatized large chunks of combat, but they did it on the rubric of security. But he said, let's privatize everything except combat, and we'll just have the low-paid people be the ones who get shot. And so they hired these cooks for $100,000 a year, and then Halliburton or whatever company it was tacked another 30% on top. And so for $130,000 a year, we're paying people to be cooks. The base gets overrun. Then you got to have a soldier come protect the cook. I mean, it's
crazy.
It's literally nuts. Yeah.
It is funny because I have a friend. He was calling me from Iraq while bombs were falling. And then he would tell me stories about going to the mess hall with the card that every time they swipe, it costs $15 or something like that for the meal that they're eating. It was a complete waste. And then they hired a lot of folks that make very little money, folks from India, Pakistan, and these other places. Now, before I want to talk a little bit about how we restore the middle class, but I want to take this out of order because Hamilton's 11-step plan worked for 188 years. Really?
That's true. That's true. And the Tudor plan worked for 200 years before that in England, and the Dutch equivalent of it, I never was able to find that there was a name for it, but the Dutch really figured this out about 100 years before that, back in the 1400s. And so here's the story. When George Washington was elected president, he wanted to be sworn in wearing American clothing, American-made clothing. The British had a monopoly on clothing through the East India Company, and they had outlawed American-made clothing. But there was this one guy, Daniel Hinsdale, who had a little shop in Connecticut, who was, underground manufacturing clothes. And so Washington had General Knox to carry his measurements to Connecticut. And Hinsdale brought back a nice brown American-made suit that Washington wore for his inauguration. He wore British black for the famous painting, but for his inauguration, he wore an American-made suit. And then when he became president, he turned to his Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, and said, we've got to figure out how to turn America into a great industrial power like the United Kingdom is. We will not have a national security until we do. There are some industries that we obviously must have. We must be able to manufacture munitions, for example, and things like that for our military. But beyond that, we should be making everything here. So Hamilton did a deep dive into this, and he discovered the Tudor plan, the King Henry VII's Tudor plan from the 1500s. When Henry became president, or became king rather, England was dirt poor. I mean, dirt poor, deeply in poverty. The roads were all mud roads. The people lived in thatched huts. The major export of England was raw wool. And so the plan that Henry VII put into place was that all imports of finished goods, whether it was a sword or a stove or any kind of machinery, whatever it may be, all imports of finished goods had really high taxes on them, import tariffs, to discourage the importation of manufactured goods and encourage the manufacture of the domestic
locally.
Right. And then he gave grants to companies that looked like they had the potential to start factories and build things locally. He gave not just zero tariffs on exports, but actually export supports. In other words, a tax credit to companies that exported things, again, to expand the market so that the factories could get bigger and more powerful and grow. And the bottom line was that it turned England in 2 generations from literally the poorest country in Europe to the wealthiest country in Europe. And so Hamilton took that and put it together as an 11-point plan and presented it to Congress in 1791. And by 1793, Congress had adopted most of it. And we had these tariffs that ran from 20% up to 60%. The average was around 40% from the founding of the Republic, or from 1793 up until Reagan came into office. In fact, our tariffs were such a significant source of income to the United States that the entire federal government's budget was paid for by tariffs up until the Civil War.
Wow.
Civil War until the end of World War I, 2/3 of the federal government's budget was paid for by tariffs. And what that did is it kept all the manufacturing in the United States, plus we exported things all over the world. There was a discount on the import of raw materials, a high price on the export of finished goods. Which, by the way, I lived in China in 1988 for a while, and they were having this debate in China at that time about whether or not they should follow Russia and Chile and Iraq. It wasn't at that time, but Russia and Chile into this neoliberal experiment, or whether China should adopt Alexander Hamilton's American plan, which is what everybody called it. It was Hamilton himself called it the American plan. So in the late 80s, as we were abandoning the American plan and the Reagan administration was negotiating NAFTA and negotiated the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, that became the World Trade Organization. As we were embracing neoliberalism, China fully embraced the Alexander Hamilton
Tudor,
plan. Yeah, the old Tudor plan. And guess what? Here we are, 30 years later. And 35 years later, more or less, and China this year or next year will become the largest economy in the world. The Chinese middle class numerically is larger than the entire population of the United States. And it's because our manufacturing is being done there. And
they're doing all the work.
Right. Adam Smith pointed this out in Wealth of Nations. If you have a tree limb laying on the ground, it has no intrinsic value to the nation. But if you apply human labor to it, if you carve it into an axe handle, it now has value, and it has a value that will last for generations. And that value becomes part of the wealth of the nation. The only way wealth is created is not by a service economy. If you wash my car and I mow your lawn and we pay each other for that, there's no wealth created, right? There's money moving around. But a service economy is almost an oxymoron. It does not create wealth unless it's a very narrow range of services, like a surgeon who can put you back together so you can continue to be productive.
Right.
In large, service economies don't create wealth. Manufacturing creates wealth. Adam Smith laid this out in 1776. It was the principle on which Alexander Hamilton, one of them, on which he based the American plan. And it wasn't rejected in the United States until Reagan came along. We still have 22,000 categories of products that you can read on the website of the Commerce Department that have tariffs attached to them.
Yeah, I had to read that in the days. Yeah.
Yeah. And the tariffs, in the Reagan era, before the Reagan era, those tariffs were 10, 15, 20, 30, 35, 40%, depending on the goods. Those goods that had to do with the national defense, sometimes they were 100% tariffs. Now they're all non-existent. There's 0, 1%, 2% at the most. And I mean, Trump threw a couple of tariffs on a few things, but it was a joke. And so we have no national industrial policy. And what I end this book with, the hidden history of neoliberalism, is a call to return to the Hamilton plan, which worked so well for us and has worked so well for China, and to abandon neoliberalism. Because if we don't, we're going to end up like Russia. Russia is the perfect example of what happens with neoliberalism.
It's funny that you said that, because just yesterday, actually, I think it was yesterday in the program, we actually said that Russia is the perfect instantiation of unfettered capitalism and where you actually end up with it. And, they're doing a great job of it. So you do think, you kind of jumped the gun on me right there, Tom, but let me just go ahead and say, so you do think that we still have the power to rebuild the middle class by just abandoning neoliberalism? Don't you think we also have to create a better bifurcated economy?
Well, the two are, you can't do one without the other. If you abandon neoliberalism, what you're really abandoning is laissez-faire capitalism. You're abandoning unregulated capitalism. So then the question becomes, okay, if we're going to regulate capitalism, how are we going to do it? Just like, the NFL. Okay, if we're going to regulate football, how do we do it? Do we do it so that one team always wins? Or do we do it so that the game is fun and everybody can play and everybody wins, eventually, that it's interesting? And, Franklin Roosevelt showed us the way. Like I said, he built the middle class. There was no middle class in America before Roosevelt, and Truman and Eisenhower. Eisenhower wasn't a neoliberal. He was right there with, and he was a Republican. When he ran for re-election in 56, he bragged about how many people he had joined unions. That was his main thing. That's why my dad was voting for him. Union guy, And so, what we need to do is we need to go back to strengthening and protecting unions and union rights. We need to do away with Taft-Hartley and the so-called right to work for less programs. We need to re-regulate financial institutions. We need to break up the giant monopolies. Those laws are still in place. In 1983, Reagan directed the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission to stop enforcing the antitrust laws. We need to start enforcing them again and break up some of these giants. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's all stuff that we've done in the past, and it works real well. And it's all stuff that, frankly, every country in Europe except England is doing right now. And
look at where England is right now with their economy compared to others.
Yeah, right. I mean, the whole neoliberal thing started there 2 years before it started here. It started in 1978 with Maggie Thatcher. Yeah.
It is amazing. Well, Tom, before we end here real quickly, what's your expectation for 2022? I'll tell you mine first. I actually think we're going to get the surprise of our life in 2022. I think we hold everything. I agree.
Okay. I think it's going to be an absolute blowout. I try not to say it too often because I don't want to jinx it, knock wood.
I want to speak it. I want to say it because I tell you, I think, when you remember Obama used to talk a lot about the fever breaking. I wish he broke a few more, but I'm starting to feel, including with my right wing listeners, a change coming. And I think if the Democrats don't screw it up, and they could always do that.
Yes, never underestimate their.
If they don't screw it up, it's in their hands to take it, and I think take it big, because first of all, women are going crazy. And when it comes to the economy, there are so many different narratives that are out there for us. Thom, the last question I always ask, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
I don't know.
If I hear I don't know,
as usual. Egberto, excuse me.
Hey, well, let me tell you something, Thom. I really appreciate you spending the time to talk about your book, folks. Don't forget, go out and get that book, The Hidden History of Neoliberalism. It's a big word, but it's well defined by the one and only Thom Hartmann. The Hidden History of Neoliberalism: How Reaganism Gutted America and How to Restore Its Greatness. But before I tell you guys, my right-wing brothers and sisters, you have got to read the book. Don't just see neoliberal and panic. Read the damn book. Thom Hartmann, author of The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reagan Gutted America and How to Restore Its Greatness. Thank you so kindly. And by the way, also the head of the Thom Hartmann Show every day on Free Speech TV, every day on just about every network, including KPFT. You got to check the guy out. Thom Hartmann, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Egberto, it is always such an honor and a pleasure to hang out with you and talk with you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys. First of all, before I get busy, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank Richard W. Richard W., thank you so kindly for your super chat. Richard W. says, government subsidies since 1793. Thank you, Alexander Hamilton, LOL. And when we had that power failure a few ago, that was when again? When we had that power failure a few weeks ago, I forgot to thank Bridge MCP for her super chat, so I have that up on the screen as well. Thank you guys so kindly for all that you do to ensure that we can continue doing Politics Done Right. Look, we cannot do this without you. I hope you enjoyed Thom Hartmann. Before we go, I think it's time for me to do my ask. Politics Done Right depends on you to keep doing what we do. What do? We make sure to keep, number one, the internet seeded with blogs and information to counter the right and to present what progressives represent for the benefit of us all to everybody, so that it's not misread, misled by any other entity. We make sure and populate that internet with blogs, with videos, with all these other things to make sure that we are informed and to counter everything that you normally hear that are lying at the right. We also make sure to create articles in magazines, articles in newspapers all around the country to ensure, again, that our message gets out there. Last but not least, we also write books. As you see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, How to Make America Utopia, are two of the many books that I've written on these issues. So please support us in one of many ways. Numero uno, you can support us at PayPal, either one time or monthly. Go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can support us on Patreon. That is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. You can support us by becoming a part of our YouTube channel, going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, or you can support us in many other forms that you can find at politicsdoneright.com/support. Be sure to visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, and get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. Politics Done Right depends on you to keep doing what... Absolutely so, folks. So thank you. Yes, Yvette, thank you so kindly for posting those stars. And if anybody wants to post stars, they can post stars as well. If you need to know exactly how to do it, ask Bridge MCP or ask Yvette Avery Herod or ask El Senor Rodnan. They have all been sending stars. Anyhow, folks, continuing with the program. continuando con el programa, I have been very upset actually, about the coverage that we're getting today. So here's my thoughts.
King Charles just gave his speech, and he's talking about the service of Queen Elizabeth II. First of all, I do want to give from the human side condolences anytime one loses a family member. It's hurtful. We love our family. We love our relatives. We love people. So in the human side, we feel for the death of Queen Elizabeth II. That said, the overarching coverage, the overarching accolades that we are given the monarchy and the pomp and circumstances, as I continuously say, it's unwarranted and undeserved. And to see grown folk act like this over a fairy tale, over a monarchy that has caused much disaster throughout different groups around the world, including in Ireland, its close neighbor. It drives one crazy. But anyhow, it's interesting because what really lit me up this morning is this type of response from grown men and the devaluing of the common man. Check this out.
It's just him. It's just him. Camilla, I can't see Camilla in these pictures. There's going to be so many things that we're going to be picking out. Another notable point when you're watching Charles and Camilla now, she's walking behind him. He's the sovereign. He's the monarch.
There is so much to that little segment there. She's walking behind him. You walk behind me. I am the sovereign. I am the monarch. What? How can you even say that and not feel diminished? How can you say that in the year 2022? And I don't think anybody, first of all, when you hear folks talk about how great and nice a monarch is or how their life of service, they've got to. What else are they going to do? What's their other purpose in life? We've gotten over, or we should be getting over, the monarchy and working as democracies. It's about time, don't you think? And to think that just because you have a bloodline inherently supposed to rule others, that you continue to be the queen of the Commonwealth, independent countries, and they still have you symbolically as a queen. It's one of the most degrading things, especially from countries that one colonized, dominated, and hurt many people in those countries. I think it is sad. And you know what? This morning, one of my favorite writers, I subscribed to her writings, and I just felt a sense of peace in that I was not one of the few feeling this way, but somebody decided, let me just write about it. And Allison Gaines at Medium, Medium is a great place, folks. Please go to medium.com and support these different writers by just getting a little membership, and you'll see that you read unlimited great writers. But anyway, Allison says, why most black people are refusing to mourn Queen Elizabeth II. It's time to decolonize the grieving process. And I love the way she starts. One thing has become painfully clear in the aftermath of Queen Elizabeth II's death is her legacy is complex. Yes, it is. While some will spend the next few weeks praising the longest-serving British monarch's reign, black people and other marginalized groups are having a different conversation about the harm of British colonialism. For instance, Irish Twitter reflected on the monarch's role in the Great Irish Famine. While Americans often hear about the famine as a natural phenomenon, Britain actually deprived Ireland of resources and systematically stripped the Irish of even the least semblance of basic human freedom. Some refer to their efforts as genocide. As Irish people expressed their discontent, they found a new friend in solidarity: Black Twitter. We often hear that Britain is known for a type of polite racism, but that's misleading. The British Empire's sole role overshadowed the participation of all other Northern European powers in the transatlantic slave trade. And like America, Britain has never paid reparations to formerly enslaved people or their descendants. As a result, the legacy of the slave trade has helped to codify a racial hierarchy in the country. So, what does this have to do with the Queen? Well, for starters, the royal family has made its fortune from the slave trade. It started when Queen Elizabeth I allowed John Hopkins to kidnap slaves from Africa to sell to the Caribbean, making tremendous profits. Then the death of Queen Elizabeth II sparked renewed calls for reparations as King Charles become the new monarch. Read the entire article. It is solid. It follows the things like when England was an empire, stealing the treasures, the pharaohs, or treasures from all over, from Nigeria, etc., putting it in their museums, and now these folks want their stuff back, and too often they refuse. So let's be careful, let's be cognizant, let's be measured. But this saturation of adoration for the monarchy, for Queen Elizabeth II, for those of us who have lived under this empire, whether you be in the Caribbean, wherever you are, let's not give undue credit where it's not at all due. Let's go ahead and mourn the lady, the nominal Queen of England, and then to hell, get rid of it. No bloodline, because a bloodline should inherently have dominion over anything. We should be worth what we work for. We should be worth what we decided to adapt to our intellect for. But to just have 24 coverage of a queen's death, and you ask, what's the purpose of the queen? Is she making lives better for anybody else? But you have coverage like this, a semblance of reality creeps into the minds of those who are looking at these channels as if this is how they are informed. Let's really be informed. They are proven they're poor informers.
Absolutely so. So yeah, that Allison did a good one, but the other one is the one that I have for today. By Brett Wilkins, title of his article, and let me put that one on the screen. And by the way, folks, please subscribe to Medium. If you subscribe to Medium, to that link that I'm putting in there right now, if you subscribe to Medium, it's very inexpensive, and you can read all of my articles without advertising at Medium, and all the thousands of other writers. You can select a group of writers that you like. I have a group of writers that I like to follow at Medium, and it is wonderful. Wonderful, the amount of writers that you can go. Thank you for subscribing, Bridge MCP. But that is something, you're not just reading my articles. You're supporting, you're helping to support me by supporting everybody else. So I just gave you my link, which, it's you get membership through my link. But what that does is you have this body of writers, and you don't have to simply tolerate the crap you see on mainstream media, the New York Times, the Washington Post. You get viewpoints from other folks that will never, ever get an opportunity to make it on the New York Times or Washington Post, because their point of view, just nobody wants to, it doesn't fall within those two rails. So therefore, you know what happens. They don't get the coverage. So please, folks, go to that link that I just put in there, the politics. Oh, it's not a politics and right link. It is a medium.egberto.com / it's right. It is medium.egbertowillies.com/membership. medium.egbertowillies.com/membership. But this person wrote, after Queen's death, victims of British imperialism share why we will not mourn. And he starts the article this way. We do not mourn the death of Elizabeth because to us her death is a reminder of a very tragic period in this country and Africa's history, declared Julius Malema, head of the left-wing Economic Freedom Fighters Party in South Africa. Elizabeth ascended to the throne in 1952, reigning for 70 years as a head of an institution built up, sustained, and living off of a brutal legacy of dehumanizing of millions of people across the world, he continued. During her 70-year reign as queen, she never once acknowledged the atrocities that her family inflicted on native people that Britain invaded across the world. Malema noted, she willingly benefited from the wealth that was attained from the exploitation and murder of millions of people. The British royal family stands on the shoulders of millions of slaves who were shipped away from the continent to serve the interests of racist white capital accumulation, at the center of which lies the British royal family, Malena added. Larry Madowo, a CNN international correspondent, said during a Thursday broadcast that the fairy tale is that Queen Elizabeth went up to the treetops here in Kenya and princess and came down a queen, because it's when she was here in Kenya that she learned that her dad had died and she was to be queen. But that also was the start of the 8 years after that the British colonial government cracked down brutally on the Mau Mau rebellion against the colonial administration, he continued. They herded more than 1 million people into concentration camps where they were tortured and dehumanized. And a lot of people would like us to forget what that family meant to others. Not that beautiful, nice. She smiled and she touched her head. She was so cool. Robert Davenport, welcome aboard, brother. He says, somebody loses a grandmother or a great-grandmother every day. This is no more sad. I agree, 100%. Lee Grant says, maybe we should nuke England to pay for all the crimes. No, maybe we should go and take all their assets and pay how the assets were originally gotten. Maybe that's what we could do, right? So come on now. Egberto, after the show, I'd like you to check this out. Thank you, Redden. You always have some very good, interesting things for me to look at and also learn from. All of you do. But Redden is a prolific researcher. And Bridge as well. But Bridge is a professor, so we expect that out of Bridge. Maywood, hello, Lee Grant. Let me see, if there's anybody that I forgot to salute, call out, or whatever, let me know. Robert Davenport says, Egberto, you are spreading the truth. The right-wingers love fantasies. That is absolutely so. But again, folks, I think, the important thing that's missing, and I got to get out of here, it's 4 o'clock. The important thing that's missing is what Mr. What's his name? Malema said. Not once. She was on the throne for 70 years. Not once did she apologize for the massacres that occurred under her family's name. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Not once did she say, we should find some form of reparation. Not once. So when you're expecting everybody to have that nice, soft, and cushy feeling for a royal that passes away and tries to give her a big send-off, that is like asking somebody who stabbed you to get up and have a nice word for you. I don't think so. My name is first of all, please, folks, support the program however you can. The all-encompassing support link is at politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support. Thank you so kindly. Whoop, Bree says, thanks, Egberto. Willis, for a good show, and thank you guys for a great chat. We have the most wonderful family here. All of you. Those that agree, disagree, whatever. Please keep coming. Please remember to tell others about the program. Let's keep sharing intelligence. My name is a Persuasive Barrier. Welcome to Politics Done Right. They like rewriting narratives and history that comes with winning in recent years. Nanette Bird-Smith says, thanks, Egberto. Thank you all. It's about thank you all. Thank you so kindly, all of you, for being a part of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.